At Overberg, as the crowds gather, so do the display aircraft. Impressing by its sheer size is South African Airways' brand new A340 Airbus. And pulling a few heartstrings is the world's last flying Avro Shackleton Mark III. The South African Air Force is present, showing off their hardware, both old and new. On the programme are aircraft like the Pilatus trainers called the Astra and the multi-purpose Oryx helicopter. Competing in the power stakes is the locally built Cheetah fighter bomber and the ubiquitous C-130 Hercules. The Thunder City display begins with the F-6A Hunter.
I mean, the Hunter is just an awesome machine to fly. It's a great fighter trainer aeroplane. It's by no means a soft touch. This is a Mach 1.3 aircraft and puts out a large amount of thrust. Swept-wing aeroplane, but very graceful, very docile, and a very forgiving machine. Hugely aerobatic, I mean, great roll rate, very accurate to fly, and just an absolute joy, delight.
The Overberg Air Show is held every 2 years, and this year the main event is the flight of not one, but 3 Buccaneer low-level attack jets. The last time 3 of them flew together was during action in the Gulf War over Iraq in 1991.
I mean, a Buccaneer is as different from a Hunter as anything. It's a low-level strike attack machine, so for whizzing around low-level in the mountains and doing low-level work, the Buccaneer is just simply unsurpassable. 2 huge Rolls-Royce Spey engines, huge endurance, and also phenomenal maneuverability at the kind of weights we're flying at it. One of the greatest most challenging things about the Buccaneer is its systems. It's a very systems complex airplane, a very intense pilot workload, and super critical. If you get any of those things wrong, they can have disastrous consequences. So when you're flying one of the only 3 left in the world, you really have to be on top of your game.
The English Electric Lightning is, even today, one of the fastest aircraft in the skies. And 2 of only 3 flying examples will fly. One will be flown by retired Royal Air Force Lightning pilot and instructor Brian Carroll.
I was based at RAF Lucas on the 23 Squadron for a number of years, and from there, when the Cold War was still on, we would scramble off to intercept Russian bears off the Iceland Terrace Gap. So we get a scramble day or night, any time of the day or night. We were always on alert. We would take off and we would then fly north and rendezvous with a tanker, that was the Victor tankers, which had been scrambled in plenty of time. And we'd stay with them for a while, often using purely silent procedure. We didn't want to let the Russians know we were en route. We would refuel on the tanker, we'd then break away from the refuel, leave the tanker maybe 300 miles north of base, and then accelerate away, go and find the bears, take photographs, and make friendly visual signals to them or otherwise. They would do the same to us. They would try and take out photographs too, but we were somewhat more manoeuvrable than the bear, which, as you probably know, is a huge bomber. On more than one occasion I would be alongside the tail taking photographs, and I could see a Russian photographer inside with a huge camera on a tripod setting it up, and as soon as he had it set up I'd just roll over the fin and go to the other side, look back in, and he'd be walking back across with his tripod and camera, setting it up, and I'd roll back the other side, and I think all he ever got was a shot of my tailplane going away with the reheats burning.
I mean, the Lightning is the sort of the Formula One car of this genre of aircraft. I mean, it's just massive, massive thrust, and that's the single biggest exciting feature. It's just the raw power. The other exciting feature in the negative sense of the world is the lack of fuel. So that is, I mean, I think when I was doing my Lightning training, my trainer, who was Keith Hartley from British Aerospace, said there are 3 things you must remember about the Lightning: fuel, fuel and fuel. It is so critical. At maximum thrust, where it's developing supersonic thrust out of its jet efflux at about 36,000 pounds, it's using around about 480 litres a minute of fuel, so that's why it's very critical.
Considering the Lightning was on the drawing boards in 1947, and that's going back many, many years, the quantum leap from the wartime, World War II, and just after, when the Meteors and the Vampires are coming in, and they would do 520, 550, and the Lightning was a quantum leap. We're now looking at something going supersonic, which hadn't happened before. So it was just tremendous, and as I say, compared to F-16s, Mirages and such, the performance of the Lightning is still as good as anything around today. Okay, Eurofighter is a better aeroplane, it gets to height faster, and in cold power, whereas we need reheat with the Lightning. But that said, after 45 seconds from brake release, the Lightning is doing 450 knots, and 15 seconds later, it's doing a climb of 50,000 foot a minute. So you're getting to 36,000 feet in about 2.5 minutes, still doing 0.9 or 9 miles a minute.
The endurance in the Lightning is largely anything between 9 minutes to an hour, depending on how much of the loud lever you use.
We're just crossing the Pennison line now and routing Cape Colours.
Thank you, Charlie Vital. Mike, I'll call you open shortly. I've got one landing now and one at about a mile and a half.
Okay, thanks. One of the batches not being fuel.
Coming from
I'm in tank number 3 of the Buccaneer fuselage tanks. 3 of 8. And we have a leak. Hopefully it is an X leak. Yeah, the problem with maintaining aircraft like this is they weren't designed with the engineers or the technicians in mind. They were designed purely to be functional, and that makes an absolute headache to maintain. You have to get into all awkward places like this and do the jobs that need to be done. There's the hatch, and that's the area I tried to seal there, and on the vertical wall coming from that. And now it's leaking in the next tank forward in that area over there. Hopefully that's the tank seal. Now I've just got to put all the bolts in.
We've got parts here to keep these airplanes going for another 10 years, I'm sure, or more. Engines, we've got 7 or 8, which are in good nick, you know, and stored and preserved properly. Reheat pipes we are short of, but you know, with rubbing from one to the other, you can actually turn a number 1 into a number 2 and vice versa. So, you know. Burners which are lifed, and they have a different life on the single-seater than they do on the two-seater. The two-seater doesn't need afterburner to take off, the single-seater does. So your life on the afterburner, the burner ring itself, is 300 hours on a single-seater, but 600 hours on a two-seater. The limiting factor would probably be the tires. But we're storing them properly, we're keeping them, you know, out of the sunlight, because sunlight destroys rubber. So we've got them all covered. We don't have too many tire problems here at the moment. It depends. Sometimes you can get 16 landings per set of tires, or per tire. Sometimes only 1. It depends on the crosswing component on the runway, and how rough the runway is, and how rough the taxiway is. It's quite often it's the taxiing around that does the scuffing on the tires, and the takeoff, not the landing. Well, as the airplane rotates, and you've got a slight crosswing component, it scuffs, you know, just gently scuffs away, and it tears the tire. These airplanes were designed, most of the ground crew working on the airplanes were in the early 20s, you know, where you had the old flight sergeant at 45, you know, 40, 45 years old, you know, controlling the whole thing, all right? Here we're a lot older than that, so it takes a little bit longer. You know, you go home at the end of a day and you know you've worked on a Lightning because you're aching from head to foot. You know. And it's a difficult airplane to, as I said, you know, and they're all different. There's not one of them the same. There's not one Lightning the same. Okay. No fire 2. I'm going to fire up number 2 engine first and do all the idle checks, see if the pressures and temperatures are all right. And if that's correct, then he's going to do the reheat runs. That's max. You're burning 500 pounds of fuel a minute, and you can't remain in reheat for longer than 15 seconds on the ground. And we'll see where it goes from there. That's the nozzle crash lock. This will stop the nozzle from folding under the immense pressure of the reheat.
We've now, I think, recently just completed over 1,500 operational sorties without incident, touch wood, and that's a great tribute to both the people and the systems that we operate. And we look at the thing in a sort of a 5-compartment formula, which says, firstly, you've got to have good airplanes. So we want to know that the airplane is basically a sound, restorable deal. It can work. Secondly, you've got to have your skills. You've got to have, and the skills apply to operational people, maintenance people, all the other different skills that are required in putting a military operation together. Obviously not involving armaments, other than for things like explosive with seats and explosive release units and drop tanks and things like that. Third leg to the stool is to have the right levels of spares inventory. And to that end, we've acquired over the years job lots, which we've managed to distill out into a reasonable operational inventory. And the fourth leg to that stool would be all the special toolings, ground support equipment, and the plethora of things that go around keeping these machines in the air that are different to what one would require for a normal civilian type airplane. And any one of those little things that's not there can cause a problem. Ad-libbing, improvising, we don't want to do. We want to do it by the book. And the fifth element is the legal and administration work that goes through with this whole thing. Most people don't realize it's not air that keeps papers in the air, it's paper. And the paperwork on these airplanes is phenomenal. So we have libraries, we have record keeping. I can go back and tell you exactly what this airplane was doing 50 years ago.
Good morning. Hi, Christoph. Hi, Dave. Nice to meet you. It's my wife, Stella. Stella,
Hi.
how are you doing?
Hello. Yeah.
Well, right. I just took the advantage for my 30th birthday present to come down to Thunder City today and go up in the Lightning, which has always been, ever since I was a young lad, it's always been my favourite aircraft. I've had pictures of it all over my wall when I was a young boy, so it's very much a dream come true today.
How to start this thing.
It's November 2005. A selection of Thunder City's hardware is displaying at another Air Force base, at Easterplaat in Cape Town. Dave Stock will attempt a world record climb to 9,000 meters.
We're going to go out there, get this thing going, take our time, get as much thrust as we can before we release the brakes, and then get 600 knots as soon as possible and go straight up. What are you trying to achieve? I'd like to pass 20,000 feet less than a minute and 30,000 feet in 1 minute 20. That's what I think is achievable. So we'll go for that. Good luck, Dave.
flying the T7 twin-seater with a ventral fuel tank removed to reduce drag and carrying less than 2,000 pounds of fuel in each wing, the Lightning will have but one attempt at the new record.
Fantastic, unbelievable experience, really once in a lifetime. Really could not have imagined what it was like to be pulling those G's as you go around the corners at high altitude and house speed. Oh, remarkable. There we go.